the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. I'm Nick Barris here on the Plus. It is Wednesday. Good show on tap for you. Politics. We're less than a week before the election. Of course, many of you may have already voted. If you haven't, I think, is early voting over? I think it wraps up. It wraps up tomorrow, as a matter of fact. But we want to get into some of the latest developments, and it seems like every day there's something new coming on for one of the presidential candidates. And we want your take on how everything's playing out, and we'll look at how they're handling it. Professor from Vanderbilt, Tom Schwartz, is with us again this morning. It's good to see you. You've been on a lot with me, and I really appreciate it. I hope our viewers don't mind that we talk politics. Look, this is all going to go away in a week. It's all going to go away in a week, and we'll be on to something else. But it is fascinating. It is what we do. Okay, let's just start. The biggest, newest development since we last talked, and many of you have followed it, and I want your take on it, is the situation with Hillary Clinton's emails, the discovery of more of them, and the FBI sent a letter to Congress basically saying, yeah, we're looking into it. And all right, my first take from you is, with that being out there, and certainly Donald Trump jumped on that immediately, and that's one of his themes. How does that hurt her? How will it hurt her? Meaning, are there that many undecideds that may say, whoa, that pushed me one way or the other? Or does that mean there are some that maybe are on her boat now that see this and say, I'm jumping off it? I mean, realistically, how much does that hurt her?
My own sense of this is that where it might play the biggest role is with those Republicans who have been very squeamish about voting for Trump. It's one more thing saying, I just cannot vote for Hillary, so I have to vote for Trump, even if I don't agree with him or find him as palatable as normally I would. So in a way, Trump has always been polling only at about 80 to 85% of Republicans actually wanting him compared to Clinton's base. And so I think to the extent that it can encourage those Republicans who have been doubtful, more revelations about Hillary that cast doubt on her honesty, that cast doubt on her truthfulness with the American people, that could push more Republicans to the polls.
And so what you're saying here is that these Republicans you're talking about weren't going to vote for Hillary. They just weren't going to vote, or perhaps
maybe not
vote for someone else. And now this might be enough for them to say, well, Mitch, as I maybe don't like Donald Trump, I certainly can't vote for her. I'm going to go for him now.
Yeah. So that's why I see it having more of that effect, since I don't really think you've got a huge pool of undecided voters. This election has been going on so long, the country is fairly partisan, so I think it's really the question of enthusiasm and the degree to which people are willing to go to the polls.
Yeah, that's right. And I'd like to hear from some of the viewers out there, and I know the callers who call in here have pretty much made up their mind one way or another and probably wouldn't say it would affect them one way or the other. The core is there. On the other hand, if for some reason another inflammatory video comes out of Donald Trump, like the last one, of course, and it came out now, I'm not so sure how much damage that would do to him.
I don't think.
I just don't think.
There was some discussion this past week about whether there would be revelations on contacts with Russia of his campaign. It turned out there wasn't really much there. There's scandals about Trump's charitable donations. There's been a big feature in the Post on that, and none of that has gotten much traction. I think pretty much the images of both candidates are pretty set with voters, and they're making their choice on this.
Now, it's interesting to see in the aftermath of that from the FBI how the different candidates reacted. All right, so Donald Trump, of course, you said, well, yeah, all right, this is what I've been saying all along. It is interesting to see how at one point he had no affection for the FBI director.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, and I guess, when they do something you like, you're going to say you like it. When they don't, you say you don't. But Donald Trump was calling him every name in the book a while back, and now all of a sudden great guy.
And the same with the Democrats who
goes the other direction.
We're trying to use Comey's vindication of Clinton for their own purposes, and now that he brought this up, are attacking him. It's very transparent, but I think it's probably unlikely to sway many voters one way or the other.
Now on the past 24 hours, Hillary Clinton appears to be trying to focus back in on women voters. Yes. Heavy duty. They've decided, okay, what's most damaging to Trump? Where can we get him? And I mean, the bottom line is you cannot win an election, in my opinion, in this country if you don't get any female vote. Now, Donald Trump has some female vote. I'm not saying he doesn't. But you need female vote. Just as I believe you have to have African-American vote, you have to have Hispanic vote. You don't get any of that That's why Trump's core, I've always thought, is middle-class white Americans.
Well, middle class, in general, one of the ways in which he's running way behind traditional Republican candidates is with Republican suburban women. And to the extent that Hillary can either through these ads depress their turnout or turn many toward her, she will have more success.
So
and that's
talk
in
about that
Pennsylvania.
strategy. Her strategy was probably thinking, look, we've got to change the narrative because I'm getting hammered on this latest with the emails, as you would expect. And so her thinking, aside from maybe just saying, look, I made a mistake, but there's nothing there. You'll hear about it soon enough. Saying of everything she could have chosen, she chose let's hammer on the woman issue.
Well, there's plenty there. That's why you can run an ad. She just has done an ad that's fairly devastating on this issue of just using Trump's words and images from the video. And I think in that sense, I think they probably have internal polling that shows that is their strongest argument, or one of the strongest arguments for his lack of temperament and lack of suitability to be president of the United States. And women do vote generally at a greater percentage than men. And if they can turn out that vote, and especially in states, especially in the battleground states like Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, Michigan, if they can hold on to that vote, they've got their blue wall, and they can win the election.
All right, and all this stuff, and who knows, there may be more revelations in the next week, but how many millions of people have already voted?
They were saying 26,
27 million people have already voted, and that's a situation where, you know, again, I don't believe that some of those people who have already voted are going to hear some of these new revelations and say, oh, well, I would have gone the other way.
Although Trump has, of course, mentioned to them that they can change their vote in some
and I
states.
didn't know that. You can? How do you do that?
You have to. I guess you have to go in and say, I made a mistake, and ask for another ballot. Somehow they could invalidate your earlier ballot. But I somehow doubt that there's going to be any groundswell on this story. But he has been raising it and sort of bringing it up. Some of the states where you can change your vote, though, are places like Mississippi, where it's probably not going to be an issue. So it's a little bit hard. Wisconsin is one, though, that you actually can. And evidently, when he was campaigning there yesterday, he brought that up.
That's it. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense. I suppose if I was a fence sitter, really, truly was, and I'm not. And most of the time, I have been in the past on occasion. I would wait till the day because you just never know. But if you're pretty much sure, that's when most of the people go ahead and vote. And so that's the core that have already been out there and done that. All right. So the schedule, it's just amazing. You talk about where there's only one candidate in each party, and they can only be in so many places at once. Boy, they're going everywhere right now.
Well, there is only one candidate, but one of the things that the Clinton campaign does have is a lot more surrogates for her.
Well, yeah, I saw President
Obama is going to be in North Carolina today.
Her husband.
You've got Bernie Sanders. Yeah. You've got Joe Biden. You've got a lot of surrogates. Trump is basically a one-man show.
I'm wondering, are there any other aside from
VP? There's none that have really. I mean, obviously there are people like Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, and others who have supported him. But Chris Christie is facing that New Jersey trial on the bridge. Gingrich does do events for Trump, but is not more active on the media circuit.
Yeah, Giuliani.
Giuliani, yes, and he occasionally does events. That's right. But that'd be about the only surrogates, high-level surrogates that Trump has.
Yeah, and with the president, he's doing some campaigning for him. Does he get there on Air Force One?
Yeah, well, I think they do. They have a provision, though, if he's doing it strictly politically, he has to pay for it, or the Democratic Party has to pay for it.
Okay, so if that's the case, that's how that plays out. That's interesting. So the surrogates that she has going around, but she's certainly hopscotching around. The key is they're targeting right now the battleground states. Which ones are the key ones now as it's shaping up that really we think it's up in the air? Florida and North Carolina are certainly important, although they could survive even losing those. They have to make sure that the states in the Midwest that they have traditionally counted on, Michigan, Pennsylvania was more mid-Atlantic, but Michigan, Wisconsin, those states are solidly in their core. That I don't think Iowa's sort of mixed. It's not that many electoral votes, but they have to make sure they hold on to that blue core. They've got to also make sure now Colorado and Virginia have now been put into the toss-up category by the Real Clear Politics majority. So they may want to go back into those states as well. In this day and age, as we go to the break, and then we'll get to the phone calls, lines are open, so jump in, sound up. How important do you think endorsements are from newspapers or publications?
In this election, I think probably not very important.
Not so much, because you saw there was one of the newspapers in, I guess, Arizona that traditionally went Republican, went Democrat, and many people were upset about that. The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post has something out about the KKK newspaper.
That's right. The KKK newspaper endorsed Trump today. Yes, yeah. So I don't think, obviously, the KKK endorsement is more one that sort of the Trump campaign immediately said we don't want it.
They don't want
that.
Right.
But Trump has only gotten, I think, 1 or 2 major newspapers to support him. He's not the many newspapers that are traditionally Republican have gone against him.
It's just interesting how this shakes out. He's the outsider candidate, and for a lot of Republicans, that's what or his supporters, that's what they like.
Right.
So, all right, we're going to take a break on that note. When we come back, the number 737-7587. If you're on hold, stay there. Your take on some of these developments, what you expect in the next couple of days, and truly, if you're someone who hasn't decided yet, love to hear from you. And what it would take for you to decide to vote for one of the other candidates. You would be a fascinating person to talk to. So give us a call. But if you're on hold, we'll get to you and more of our conversation about the election right after this.